when I got to say like Dance With Me and all that, that really came from me seeing Calvin Harris when he made Acceptable in the 80s. And I was like, this guy, I like this. Like, who's this? Like, who's this? I wonder if I could get a beat from him and rap on his stuff. For some reason, when I was young, I called myself Dizzee. I don't know why. It's DJ Dizzee. When I was a jungle DJ, drum and bass. And then I went to school one day and I was acting up. And the teacher said, you're such a rascal. So I was like year 8. And I liked the name Rascal, so I changed my name to Rascal. But people were still calling me Dizzee, so I just put the two together. I grew up in Bow, East London. Sometimes it was edgy, sometimes it was a bit rough. But then other times it was amazing. So many of my fondest memories, even up to now, as I'm 35 now, man. Some of my best memories are still from Bow. So it's wicked. One thing about growing up on a council estate, is you learn there's community. I feel like there's more community on a council estate than anywhere else I've ever lived.
You said it was a bit rough at times, but what do you mean by that?
Regular inner city problems, drugs, crime rate, just stuff like that. You had to navigate as a youth. Sometimes you dabbled, you got involved. Sometimes you just see it happening around you. When I was growing up in the 90s or whatever, so I guess around 92 or whatever, I didn't understand, but there was a recession in the 92, so it was just rough off the back of that anyway. Well, I got my passion for music in Bow. Like, I'd hear some of the older boys who had like bedroom DJs blaring out jungle from their windows. I'm talking about in like the early 90s and that. That was like the soundtrack at the time.
Who was the person you looked up to most as a child?
Honestly, probably my mum, because that was like my mum raised me by herself. Her effort, her hustle, like the way she worked so hard and then did other stuff, so many legal ways of getting money, motivated me to not be lazy and go that extra mile always. My mum would go to buy clothes from the wholesalers, bring them back to the estate and sell them. Then I picked it up and learned to do that too. Mum would do labouring where I'd wake up, we'd have boxes of envelopes in the living room. You'd have to put the letters in the envelopes and all that. Like, might be 1,000 a box. So yeah, some people like their parents want to push them in a certain direction. I wanted to do music. My mum made sure I got turntables. They weren't the best turntables. My mum made sure she helped me get the turntables. There's some boys on my estate, they're twins, and one of them was a really good MC, and he was like a really, really good friend of mine. Eventually, through watching them MC, sometimes I would touch mic and I wanted to be an MC. So then I pick up the mic and then I learned to MC. I learned to rap. People know me as Grime or whatever, but I actually learned to write rhymes on drum and bass tempo. A lot of the people that I was MCing with around those times were just boys from either from my estate or not too far. They might have been from like Newham, like Storming, who then introduced me to Kano or whatever. These are all people that were just kind of around. They might live 20 minutes away, but it was local. It was like a hobby. It's like going to play football with your friends or something. That mattered the most to me. I thought about it all the time. Wow, I want to make it, especially when I got into like making tunes. Firstly, I wanted to have the best lyrics and want to be around the best MCs. Then when I got to like making beats and people liked them, I just couldn't wait to get my beats cut onto dub plate and then take them to the radio and hear other people MCing on them. Like, that was such a buzz for me. I'd already been putting out white labels. Like, white labels is like, you got a song, you go and press like 500 to go and take it to the shop, the record shops at the time, and then you'd leave it with them, and then you come back, and however many they sell, they give you your money. It got so hot that eventually I'd just go and take it to them, they'd give me the money straight up. But then eventually we got like a proper record deal, and just to hear my stuff on the radio, and that time, like I said, it was really underground radio, so it wasn't like I was gonna be hearing my stuff on mainstream radio. Didn't care about mainstream radio about that. Like I said, it was just like a sport. That's what it felt like. So you have to understand from like the first album, we've covered like the underground stuff. So from the first album, I kind of just powered through to the third. Sometimes I'll tour with other bigger artists, so Justin Timberlake, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Prodigy, or Sean Paul. So I got to see other sides of the game. And then I think by the time I got to like the fourth album, part of me understood about kind of making maybe an attempt at more commercial stuff. And it's one of those things that it went so well that people assume that I tried to go commercial, the record label tried to make me go commercial, and that's when I started putting out all that pop shit or whatever. It didn't happen like that. That was like actually one of the biggest gambles of my life, because if it would have gone wrong, it would have gone wrong and it was just on my own when I got to, say, like, Dance With Me and all that. If I'm honest, that really came from me seeing Calvin Harris on the TV when he made Acceptable in the 80s, which at the time, nothing sounded like that. And I was like, I like this. Like, who's this? Like, who's this? I wonder if I could get a beat from him and rap on his stuff. And then I've ended up meeting him at a music festival and telling him, like, yo, like, we should do something, man. And then that's where I had my first number one. And that was huge for me. Like, we celebrated that. That was a big deal. That was a big deal. To get number one. I've never had a number one before. I never had a number one album, nothing like that. And then whatever. And then Bonkers was sent to me. I was in America. The beat was just sent to me. I just heard it and thought, like, okay, right, this is like the stuff that I hated when I was a kid that was on top of the pops, or like that kind of house kind of. I wasn't really into that. But I'd understood it because by now I'd been to Ibiza and understood what that whole thing was. As a kid, I didn't know. So that's why I was able to write Bonkers, as well as what the subject matter was based on me having, I think, anxiety attacks. So that's what I'm actually writing about. But that's what I understood about how to put a song like that together. But even with that tune, I didn't know it was going to be that big. It wasn't like, right, it's time to be a pop star now. It just kind of came naturally. And there was no guarantees that it was going to work, because not one of those records I just told you about sounded like what was on the radio at the time. Right now, you think about it, it's like they were so big that it just seems like obvious, but at the time, it wasn't like that. In a way, sometimes it's easier at the start. Even though you feel like you've got everything to prove, yeah, you think less, you just do more as you go along. There's so much that's not to do with music that you end up getting involved in and all that as well. And sometimes it's harder to get inspiration in a way, especially depending on how you started. It's just hard to find inspiration to just make new songs, to make people care on a mass scale anyway. Think of how many people make music on the planet. So for you to be one person that gets so many people's attention, especially in the world we live now where everyone's trying to get everyone's attention, like it's crazy. But then in the same way, there's some things that are easier now. I've got a studio at home, I can record my own vocals, send them to an engineer, send the beat off, have everything mixed, and have like a finished song pretty much.
What's the thing in your career you're most proud of?
I mean, my mum's sacrifice is worth it, definitely. She got to see me like do good, and I'm gonna do the same with my little one. So, because you learn that this shit ain't everything. Like when I was a kid, this shit was everything to me. And then you learn that, right, it's not everything. It's just, you learn to appreciate that, right, like, wow, people take time out of their day to absorb my work, like, and it means something to them. When I'm not here no more, I'm gonna have left so much. Like, if I leave property, leave anything, the world, nature will deal with it eventually. Shit will crumble, empires crumble, buildings crumble, whatever. But the music, whatever, the influence, like, will be left behind.
What's next for you?
What's next for me? Album. So I finished my album. It's called E3AF. That's what we're dealing with now, man. It's gonna be legendary. It is. It's a vibe from the beginning to the end. I'm an originator. So, you know, the sounds there, it's not regular sounds, mate. It's not regular sounds. It's gonna go off, and we've got some legends on there as well.
But where do you see yourself being in 10 years' time?
Doing what I'm doing now. I see myself doing this in another 30 years' time, bro. I can't think of nothing else I'd wanna do. It's beyond, like, it's an obsession. Like, it's like, this is just what I do. I've done this since I was a kid. Like, it's second nature to me. But looking back on it now, like older, I feel like blessed that I'm part of something like unique that's gone down in history, and just like, yeah, just kind of proud that I did something with my life.